Hello, dear colleagues. We welcome you to the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We're talking now about raising the tariff for electricity that became effective on the 1st of September. And we give the floor to Andriy Perevertayev, who is an expert of the coalition which is called Energy Reforms. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So today I'd like to say a couple of words about what happened on the 1st of September, about the new tariffs that became active as of today, and how this will impact the consumer, the economy, and the energy sector as a whole, and what we are to expect further. To start with, I'd like to hark back for you to remember why this problem arose, why we have to so quickly and rather seriously raise the tariffs, and what were the reasons for this. So first of all, you see on the chart that in reality the situation with tariffs was not like it is now. Until 2000 it was the situation was reverse, and Ukraine, like in most of European countries where the tariffs are higher for the population than for industry, was not outstanding in this respect. But then there was a number of political decisions that led to the rise in tariffs for the industry, and they rose by approximately eightfold, and the tariffs for the population have grown only twofold. This led to the situation when today on the market there's a so-called cross-subsidizing. The professionals understand what this is, but for journalists I would like to explain once more. The sense is that the price for the population is something like, well, several times cheaper than electricity for the industry. So what do we have? We have that the industry either has to lose its competitiveness on foreign markets, or in practice include this added value into the cost of production of manufactured goods, and so the consumer will have to pay for this anyway. However, the decisions that led to this cross-subsidizing is growing several times to the tune of several times every year, and it amounts now to approximately 35 billion hryvnia a year. But of course this negatively impacts everything. And consumers do not have any stimulus for energy saving, and the industry in fact subsidizes itself, and this all leads, and has already in fact led, to the necessity to level these prices as soon as possible. And the National Commission for Regulation of Electric Energy has suggested a mechanism which is there in the coalition agreement of the stage-by-stage raising of tariffs for the population, and in parallel the lowering of tariffs for industrial enterprises. So by 2017, because this year will see the launch of the new model of market of electric energy, the tariffs for the industry and the population should become level. This has to happen in 5 stages, a rather arguable process. There's a lot of politics in this, and there are radically opposing views among the experts. I think that the tariffs should be raised because the subsidies that are there in the cross-subsidizing between the industry and the population negatively impact both the industry and population. However, the population is still one of the best payers as far as electricity is concerned, but because the population in principle is interested in changing the regime of consumption, the mode of consumption, and if there are stimuli, then I think the situation will change for the better. However, the problem of the system of tariff formation is in a great gap between the night minimum of production and consumption of electricity and day and evening maximum, which leads to the fact that every day Ukrenergo Association has to switch on and off energy blocks and units to balance the consumption and production of the electricity. We're talking about 30% of the general consumption for which the population is responsible, so such stimulating measures and the gradual approach to level tariffs will lead to the fact that the population will have an economic stimulus for lowering the consumption and reaching the maximum of consumption during nighttime, about which there was a lot of talk last year when we had so-called fan switch offs. And the ministry says now that the problem has moved from the day maximum to the night minimum, and it is not understandable how this minimum should be covered or compensated for. Maybe we will need to switch off nuclear power plants. However, this is not yet happening. The year 2017 and the model of the market of electricity that is planned to be launched has to proceed from the point of equilibrium of tariffs. If there's a diversion in the tariffs, then no market will ever work. The arrangement suggested by the new market from the point of view of tariffs won't change. There will be a separate category of consumers, and the Cabinet of Ministers will define the categories that will be subsidized from the budget, and these subsidies for the vulnerable categories of consumers will remain there. And as far as the new model of the market, I'd like to dwell it in more detail. I guess that if there are any questions about tariffs, I'm ready to answer them. The situation is here quite understandable. If we do not solve this problem, we actually close this circle, and we have to solve this problem today or in the nearest future. If we do not do this, I think, well, I see there's a comfortable situation now, beneficial situation to solve this, because without a leveling of tariffs, you won't have any stimulus.
Speaking about the new market model, I would like to talk about some of the points. Today, the ministry is completing the drawing up of the new law regarding the reform of the electric power market. We expect that in the beginning of September, this draft law will be submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers for their consideration. Tomorrow, they're going to consider that in Verkhovna Rada. We can talk along about this law. Just one aspect of that I would like to talk on, what consumers can expect. In the new market, one of the basic link in the power engineering, the following: the consumer will have the right to choose the, let's say, the power supplier, and the market will create such terms and conditions which will instrumental for the energy suppliers to appear in the scene, which is not the case today. Speaking about the economic theory as a whole, this is one of the possible, maybe the only resolution of the problem of tariffs. There is no better decision. when we have the competitors, the companies will compete for this or not consumer in order to offer this consumer better service or a better price. And so the new market model, for example, if we believe that the tariffs are more or less balanced off or leveled off, I personally can visualize several risks for the consumers. The general principle, which is the basic of the operation, is being changed. The consumer will be responsible for the, let's say, the final planning at the level of consumption, population, or the, let's say, the suppliers of global energy. There is no interest to specifically plan consumption, accurately plan consumption. As soon as we talk about the stimulus to save the energy and plan its consumption more accurately, then we have the process of forecasting and the subsequent consumption of actually power, electric power within the bounds of the forecast figure, which is not the case today, which can radically change the system existing today. There's let's say subsidies and the cross subsidies which we have today we must forget about that, and this is the experience of practical of the countries. If you take the European experience, the experience of such countries as France, which somewhat differs from the rest of the Europe, yes, there is some kind of amount of the support on the part either the companies or individuals public mechanism, which, for example, exists in France. There is some support given to some of the vulnerable categories of the consumers, but on the whole of Europe, let's say about 95-96% of the total consumption, they work on the competitive basis, competitive markets principle. There are risks, the key risks for the consumers, which and the tariffs will not be able to, will not help to avoid this. And those risks which are discussed actively now about the experts and the minister, the regulator, they face the risk of the a substantial increase price when opening the market. This is one of the biggest risks, and only the concerted actions on the regulator, on the part of the regulator, can help us avoid this risk. Together with the ministry, our associations taking care about the feasibility studies or the technical economic calculations, we try to minimize this kind of risk, so that in 2017 this risk will not be detrimental to us. This is about the negative. What opportunities we have? We are talking that Hungary will withstand the political pressure and will not say no to their stage by stage raising of tariffs, and I believe this idea should be supported. The National Energy Committee must bring to the logical end. And what are the opportunities open for the consumers? First of all, we won't be any classes or categories of consumers. All consumers will be equal. In the population, like the small business, will get the opportunity to work on an equal basis. Number two, the whole reform of the market is aimed at creating competition among the suppliers. The suppliers, again, they have the equal conditions, and if they can buy cheaper electric power, they will offer cheaper electric power. The European experience demonstrates one more important thing, that such behavior of the suppliers and the opening of the supply market for the end consumer creates the opportunity for these services. For example, the major competitor for the suppliers in Poland is the company of the mobile communication companies. And since the mobile communication companies are used to work with a big number of consumers or users, they understand what is tariff minimum and how to create such a tariff minimum to meet the requirements of different categories of consumers. The European experience shows that the operators of mobile consumers, they come up with the proposals regarding the new price for the electric power. They offer a kind of combined contract for mobile communication and power supply and electric power supply, which creates additional jobs and opportunities. And besides, in addition to that, naturally, in case, and I emphasize, in case of increasing the tariffs for the consumers, there will be a good stimulus for the efficiency of energy consumption. The Finnish and Scandinavian experience proves that the same, let's say, suppliers, in our case, this is the Obel Energo, they are interested in creating the energy efficient measures. They are interested not to lose the customers. In the majority of the European countries, the major, let's put it this way, the drivers of energy efficiency are specifically those Obel Energo, in our case, energy or power suppliers and power distribution companies. What would be the case here is difficult to say now, but anyway, I hope that this will help us to make some progress towards the energy efficiency and to decrease the consumption and decrease the cost or the prices for the consumers. In the end of my presentation, I would like to focus on the following thing as the change of the priorities which we will have to face as soon. And in this specific regard, I would like to call upon my colleagues to express the following idea. Today, the issues pertaining to tariff regulation and specifically the issues of let's say, the relation between the consumer and the local authorities. And so I would like to concentrate on the language of figures and to take decisions not proceeding from some populist ideas or economic experience of this or another decision. And myself, I would like to call upon everybody, that the consumers, associations, consumers, small business, show interest in the process of reforming, because the consumers are very badly represented in their groups during the drawn up of the draft laws, and this will have a negative say, a negative will tell upon the creating model of the market. And today's model, which is aimed on the impact of monopolies and the officials, will help us to change the future and create in Ukraine energy independent country. Thank you for your attention. Your questions, if any.
Sure. Thank you very much, Andriy. And the first question is from Ukraine Crisis Media Center about energy efficiency, which of course has to be stimulated after the tariffs have raised. How do you evaluate the legislative activity in the sphere of energy efficiency, and what are the priorities facing the parliament? Well, I regret very much, but we do not have any specific, concrete, practical actions in this sphere. The legislative basis of Ukraine compared to the legislative basis of the former Soviet republics was well ahead of them, but there were no practical steps over the last year. However, I think that everything emanates from the consumer. There's a good example, like installing solar batteries on the roofs. You know, when there's a opportunity, then this niche on the market is being actively filled in, and in Kiev region alone, 150 houses plan to become powered by solar batteries. They are creating an association, they are speaking to the regulator, and the only thing that the regulator needed to do was to create a tariff that would make this profitable. And after this, I think it is rather simple to realize. Any other questions, colleagues? Again, the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Is there a legislative initiative to stimulate the arrival of new drivers and suppliers of electricity? Maybe you should create some special conditions for those who will provide alternative energy for the population. Look how this works, in theory at least. In order for the European model of market to work, you have first of all to separate the competitive activity from monopoly activity. So every draft law that is being considered now provides for the separation of consumer from the provider. When we talk about the consumption, this is a tariff that is being regulated by the National Commission. When we're talking about supply, this is being regulated by the market. And we want the tariffs to become even, and then the question is whom the consumer will come to. Even now we have some suppliers for unregulated tariffs, but they are not very popular. If we do provide for even prices and tariffs, then there will be a sufficient number of suppliers who will offer their services. First of all, I think, well, how to stimulate this? First of all, you should not hinder this. And I think there will be a lot of stakeholders. This is a rather huge niche. The market of supply, you understand that it is serious financially and it is attractive. But the thing that should be done by the regulator, the ministry, they should create transparent and understandable rules of access to the network, for instance, and how the connection between the price at the wholesale market with the price of electricity for the end consumer is linked. This process is still in the dead end, and this is a painful spot which can result both in positive and negative effects. First of all, we plan that there won't be a license to supply according to unregulated tariff, non-regulated tariff. We plan that there will be an entire new class traders who will buy and sell electricity. They are there in the European model of the market and they rather actively work there. So I think you should not just interfere and the market will compose itself. You said that there will be, well, the risks will be minimized. But how this will happen, and tell us, so that consumers do not find themselves in the situation when they don't know where to go and what to do. From the point of view of consumer, we are working now on an idea that should answer where to go and to whom to go. The Institute of Energy Ombudsman. So far, the picture is still being drawn, but at the moment, well, such a person in the office does exist in many countries of the world, and they help to settle pre-court arguments and conflicts between supplier and consumer, and in this respect, they are sort of a free legal help. The consumer gets legal help and they do not pay for the service. Of course, there is a complicated issue how to create a mechanism of finance in this Office of Energy Ombudsman, but I do hope that it will work. And the second point is the openness of information, and this is what the National Commission is doing now, the publication of investment programs, of tariffs on the sites of the companies and on the site of the regulator, so that the consumer, if they want to, go there and have a look and clarify things for themselves. And here a lot depends on what does not a consumer understand. And we as experts will, of course, I hope, that we will create a sort of an outlet for the consumer. It will be interesting to talk to small business, to learn what is interesting for them so that we take this into account while planning the market of electricity. We take into account the complications and difficulties that small business faces. At the moment, there is no dialogue at all.
Sorry.